Well, it's been another night of incredible television. The second debate of the 2016 election ended just about 10, 15 minutes ago, and man, is there a lot to talk about. I'm Andrew Wallenstein, co-editor-in-chief of Variety, and I am joined by someone who is very well equipped to talk about this. He's been with this election every step of the way, senior editor Ted Johnson. Ted, let's get right to where I think everyone's going to want to go, but of course I also want to say that I've got an iPad here that is giving me a sense of all the kinds of questions and comments you watching this on Facebook have. We'd love to hear from you. Let's make you just as much a part of this discussion. But we're going to start between me and Ted, and I'm just going to go to where I went last time, which is, how did Hillary Clinton do tonight? How did Donald Trump do? Who won this thing?
I actually think it was Hillary Clinton by a sliver.
Sliver.
I think this was not the victory that she had at the first debate, but it didn't need to be the victory that she had at the first debate. Because Trump is on the ropes with the Republican Party, with the release of that Access Hollywood video and audio, this is something that has really dogged him. And I think one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton won this isn't necessarily because it's something that she said, it's because of what Donald Trump said. And he was talking about that video, and he continued to define it as locker room talk. This is going to be debated for the next couple of days. This video is not going away because people are going to say, how can he continue to say that this is locker room talk?
So clearly, the talk of this video dominated this debate, certainly in the early going. But are you essentially saying Donald Trump didn't handle this in a way that made it go away?
I thought that he probably, given that the Republicans have already abandoned him, have really talked about things like he hasn't shown contrition. They clearly were not satisfied with his midnight video that came out early Saturday morning, the post-midnight video. They clearly were not satisfied with that apology, that it was not contrite, and he was not really that contrite in this debate. It's not in his character. He said, essentially, I regret that it happened, but he quickly moved on. And he moved on in a big way to Bill Clinton's own indiscretions, pointing out that in the audience were women who have accused Bill Clinton. I didn't think that Trump really handled that issue all that well.
But did you think it was smart of him to have these four women not only in the room for the debate, was that a factor, but also let's not forget this unprecedented stunt he pulled prior to the debate, doing a sort of panel discussion with these women on his Facebook page?
I don't think it was a good idea. I think it probably helped him with people who were already supporting him to even energize them. But I have to say that Trump, when he goes after the Clintons, sometimes it's kind of non sequiturs. Imagine young voters and what they're thinking at this moment. They probably don't even quite grasp of who are these women, what exactly happened, and maybe that's the motive on Trump's part, is to get people asking questions about what happened with Bill Clinton. But more important, why should this be Hillary Clinton's problem? Trump accused Clinton of also attacking those women, and Clinton probably did the best thing that she probably could, which is essentially ignore him, let him dig his own hole when it came to these issues. Trump recovered, though, I think, in the last part of the debate, because he really did succeed in many ways about making this debate about Hillary Clinton and putting her on defense on some of the issues like Libya and some of the issues like Syria, and sometimes she didn't directly answer the question. I think one of the more annoying things about Hillary Clinton is during the debate when she says, well, she kind of smiles and shakes her head and says, well, if you really want to know what my policy position is, if you really want to know the truth, go to my website. I just don't think that's an effective strategy, is to not to actually outline your policy.
Still, you said something interesting off the top, which was you gave the win to the win to Hillary by a sliver, which suggests to me that you are essentially saying Donald Trump did better in the second debate.
Oh yeah,
than
yeah,
in the
he
first.
did, largely because of the last hour in this, the last maybe 45 minutes.
Okay. Was there any one moment, two moments in that last hour that really shone for you as an example of what Trump should have been doing all along?
I think that any time that he could get Clinton having to defend what is happening in Syria or what's happening in foreign policy, because I think these are questions that people really want to have an explanation of, you know, why haven't we defeated ISIS yet? I think that plays a bit to his own strengths. Now, in the process of this, the news out of what he said about Syria is going to be where he hasn't had this conversation with Mike Pence, and he actually has a disagreement with Mike Pence. But I didn't think it was as effective for Hillary Clinton to really explain the policy in Syria or the policy in Libya.
Interesting. Well, we've got some people writing in on our Facebook page, lots of questions and comments about this debate. And the thing that some people are bringing up already was, how did the moderators do, Martha Raddatz and Anderson Cooper?
I actually thought they were quite effective. They were good at doing follow-up questions. They were good at keeping time. I was just looking. Clinton and Trump seemed to get equal amounts of time.
And yet it felt like Trump was complaining throughout the debate that these debaters were giving him a raw deal and not giving him equal time. In the basketball world, we call that working the ref. Did that work?
I don't think so. I think that these are two very seasoned journalists. They've done many interviews that are prosecutorial, and they did that tonight. They really tried to, especially on those initial questions about the tape, about Hillary Clinton's emails, I think they did hold their feet to the fire. You know, the other thing is this was a town hall debate, and I think the weakest questions were from the town hall participants because they were so open-ended that it allowed the candidates to essentially, you know, revive or recite their campaign platforms. But that's almost to be expected. So there was kind of a disconnect.
Was the town hall, though, a factor tonight? Did it set a different dynamic between the candidates than we saw in that first debate?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it was, I think the tone of despite these harsh attacks on each other, the tone, if you listen to both candidates, they were actually, especially in the first half hour, talking very slowly. These were incredibly harsh attacks, especially from Trump, but he was actually talking really slowly, and part of that, I think, was motivated by this desire. I'm going to attack Hillary Clinton, but I'm also, I'm aware that I have actual voters, actual undecided voters in the room. I can't go overboard with it. Another problem that I think that Trump had, even though he recovered in the last part of the debate, I think another problem he had was just his demeanor. I heard during the debate the same thing, those sniffles that you heard in the microphone.
I felt like it was more than ever this time.
It seemed to be more than ever. And then there was this wandering. I mean, there was actually a moment of the debate in the first half hour when Clinton was attacking him, and the camera showed him walking behind. Now, he was just getting something from the stand, but I was like, is he going to actually physically attack her for a moment there because of the way the camera angle was? But it was just this kind of wandering, I think, was a little bit awkward just in terms of the body language.
Well, but in terms of things like sniffing and wandering, these make for great internet memes. People have fun joking around about these things, but do you see them as a real factor?
Not necessarily. I think that Trump's biggest liability is the whole issue of whether he has the temperament. And I think that will be used on the internet in the next day or so to show that here is Trump. He was acting kind of like a petulant child in the first half hour, especially when he complained about not having enough time, about the moderators being against him. So those stylistic things actually can matter. I think the bigger deal for Trump, though, is in some of his attacks on Hillary Clinton, it's like he was throwing everything at her. And he would start throwing out what I think are kind of non sequiturs to the average voter. He starts throwing out names like Sidney Blumenthal. People
Don't know who
very
he is.
well known is in right-wing media, very well known in Washington media. The average person would be like, who is this person?
Well, when you're talking about the aggressiveness that we were seeing in this debate, Alfonso has a good question. He's watching along on Facebook, and he says, notice that they didn't even shake hands when they arrived on stage. And I'm wondering if you thought that may have set the tone for the aggressiveness to come.
Sure, yeah. There was a lot of talk of that. Would they actually shake hands? And neither one of them reached, it didn't look like they even made an effort or were even thinking about it. And they just kind of said hello. But that was what was so strange, and I think it was one of the best questions coming from the town hall at the end is say something nice about each other.
Very interesting moment.
And after that, they did indeed shake hands. I thought it was a nice, hopeful tone to what was probably one of the most negative debates that I've seen.
Sure. Although I do feel like Clinton really tried hard, and I think she tried this in the first debate, to constantly project positivity, optimism for the country, the many issues it faces. Do you think she succeeded in that regard?
Not like a Barack Obama would succeed, but I think that her disposition was certainly sunnier than Donald Trump's. Trump frowned through the entire debate. Clinton was there with that smile. Sometimes her smile was a little incongruous to what was being talked about, especially when Donald Trump brought up the deplorables remark that Clinton had said at a fundraiser. So it seemed to be a little off. That was one of the knocks on her at the first debate as well. But in terms of positivity, I would, again, this is a contrast we've seen throughout the campaign. Clinton even said, I think America is already great. She's made that point on the campaign trail. She made that point again tonight. Trump did his best to point out where the United States is failing right now, including the recent police shooting in Palm Springs. So, again, to a certain extent, this was a debate over how you actually view the country.
We're talking with Ted Johnson. He's the senior editor here at Variety who has been covering this election from the very beginning, knows all the ins and outs, and so it's great to get these insights. You've talked a bit about the candidates, how they did, the moderators. I'm curious what you thought of the crowd tonight. There were some moments, more than a few, where it seemed like there was a lack of decorum, and I was curious if you felt that was a factor this evening.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting because you did have the town hall participants who were on stage with them, but then you also had the audience, and that's where the Clinton accusers were sitting. And the Trump people several times did start cheering and clapping, which was against the rules, and Martha Raddatz had to admonish them, I think, twice to not make any noise. Trump said it this evening. What do you have to lose? And that's probably the view of some of his supporters. Well, we're instructed not to cheer, but we're going to do it anyway because we want to really highlight a point. So, I think the risk they probably had is after a few of those, they actually would have to stop the debate and get people out of the room. So.
Do you think when you look back to the Trump of the first debate and the one we saw tonight, did he at all modulate his performance, try to do something different?
Well, again, I keep going back to this whole issue of temperament, and I'm not so sure if you had worries about Donald Trump's ability to handle the office, that you came off of this debate being pleased with that, because it was, again, when he would go on the attack, he would go through 1, 2, 3 or different things. He would quickly switch the topic to another different attack. I mean, there were some answers that would start with one issue and end up with a totally different issue. And I think that might turn off some voters, or that certainly doesn't, wouldn't soothe their fears that this is the man who can handle the Oval Office. But for his supporters, I think that this was probably the Donald Trump they know. This is the Donald Trump we've seen on the campaign trail. He was saying lines that he says all the time at his big rallies. The challenge for him is, according to polls, he tops out at about 40%, maybe 42%. He needs more than that, probably, to be president.
Sure. You know, I think you were talking about the attacks that Trump went on tonight. Perhaps, I think, the boldest was he went full throttle on the subject of Bill Clinton. It wasn't just those women in the room. He went in a way that we did not see in the first debate. One of our commenters on Facebook asks, were you surprised by Hillary's lack of response to the Bill Clinton comment?
I was not surprised by her lack of a response. There's this phrase, "Don't go down the rabbit hole," because once you engage Trump on that topic, he has the advantage, and I think that the strategy of the Clinton campaign was probably let him bring it up, and we'll see actually how this backfires on him. And we'll wait. We'll see how this plays as we get some polling based on how voters viewed this debate, how voters viewed that attack, and especially women voters, which is one of Trump's big weaknesses.
Sure, sure. Another moment that for me felt particularly shocking that I don't think, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that we've ever seen Trump do before was outright suggesting that if he were the leader of the free world, Hillary Clinton would be in jail right now for that email scandal that, of course, has been such a distraction for her throughout the campaign. Did that surprise you?
If you've been watching his rallies, if you've been to his rallies, if you've been to the convention,
you have.
This does not surprise me at all.
Okay.
I mean, the convention had a chance of lock her up. Actually, at the convention, Trump was a little more restrained. So it didn't surprise me. But I guess from a strategy perspective, you're trying to expand your base. Again, it comes back to that. Don't you need to get those additional voters out there? And perhaps it shows that the Trump concern right now is just keeping the people that he has, but that's not going to win the election.
Sure.
And maybe this is the first step towards something where he expands the base. The problem is time is running out. People are already voting.
Well, one of our Facebook users has a funny question that I think actually has a serious undertone. When you think about in past debates, past appearances, Trump never lets the last word go by at the event. He's always got something to say on Twitter, sometimes at 3 in the morning. Is there anything you think Trump's going to be tweeting about tonight that maybe he didn't get the last word in and they're in the debate?
I think that he'll again bring up Hillary's emails. I think he'll bring up again jailing Hillary Clinton because that's one thing that is being talked about quite a bit. I've noticed on social media. I think he'll definitely respond to that. It was also one of Hillary Clinton's interesting. I wouldn't call it a weakness, but I know why she said it. But I thought it was much more effective at the first debate for her to apologize for the way she handled the emails and then move on. This time she elaborated a little more. Anytime she does that, she runs the risk of getting into this legalistic talk that I think it doesn't go over the heads of voters, but I think their eyes start to glaze over and think, well, is she really trying to excuse herself?
I want to go back to the Access Hollywood scandal that has popped up in the past few days, because obviously this was something that really dominated the first part of the debate. What was interesting to me, and what I'm going to argue actually I think was effective on Trump's part, was how he would sort of absorb that kind of question and then sort of turn it to something that he thought or felt really mattered. So in other words, he's being asked about his conduct, and he gives his usual locker room answer, but then he flips very quickly to ISIS. And I thought, for me, that was a very effective way, kind of in a subtext of saying, hey, America, we got bigger problems to worry about than my loose lips. What did you think? Was that maybe too risky a strategy?
I took it as being. I mean, I think a better politician would have been able to more effectively communicate that. Again, it looked almost like a non sequitur, and that tends to be one of Trump's problems. As he moved on from answering that question, listen, what really matters is action, and then he started talking about ISIS. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, what exactly is he talking about? Mm-hmm. So I didn't think it was quite as effective as it could be.
I see.
And I bet that in the next couple days, the headline out of that exchange is going to be Trump continues to call his remarks locker room talk.
Well, another gentleman named Ted, who's watching us on Facebook, asks a question. Did you see anything presidential from either candidate? Feel free to interpret that one as you like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to say that last question was very presidential, because I think Americans appreciate humility. And it's not something we've necessarily seen a whole lot of this campaign. And the ability, after all that was said in this hour and a half, for them to go and actually praise themselves on genuine things. You know, it did seem authentic,
right,
for both of them.
But I would argue that their last questions, I think Hillary answered that well, and Trump did not, and I'll tell you why. I think Hillary praising the children of Trump is still such an affront to Trump, and so clearly not a compliment. I think Trump, you saw, really seized on that, but then didn't really go for blood, whereas I felt Trump's comment about Hillary was almost too complimentary, to say that she's a fighter, which is, I think, something that a lot of people in the electorate on both sides of the political aisle, they want somebody who's not just a bureaucrat, but to use that word, a fighter. How did it strike you?
Well, he actually essentially repeated what her campaign is pitching her as a fighter. I'm going to fight for you. You know, he's reciting her campaign theme, so maybe in that regard. But I have to say, Hillary also did pay him a compliment. She talked about his children, but she also said that says something about you. So she was making sure to connect it to him. She wasn't just saying these children were raised in a vacuum. So I still think it was a nice thing, and Trump. I took it as a compliment, because he actually recited what has been the way that she's been presented by her campaign.
Ted, a lot of people watching us on Facebook right now are very much fixated on this phrase, locker room talk. And Raj asks, what's the definition of locker room talk? And I want to kind of spin that a little bit and say, why do you think Trump stuck to that phrase when it's clearly been problematic for so many people?
Yeah, well, anytime I'm in the locker room, I'm there, and anyone else who is there, is their first mission is, how can I get changed as quickly as possible and out of this room?
Right. I don't know.
Not a place for banter, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. So.
It seems to me, though, that what Trump is essentially doing by using that phrase is saying, what I've said really isn't of any consequence or significance. It's just something guys do, and I'll bet you there's some people who are nodding their head and agreeing.
Yeah, and he probably, he also said in his remarks, he said, there's one thing about words, there's another thing about actions, and that's when he started to attack Bill Clinton, trying to infer that what the allegations against Bill Clinton were actually much more serious. The problem with what Trump said, though, in talking to Billy Bush, is, he actually did seem like he was talking about something he actually does.
Well, but we should-
activity actually does.
But let's be fair, we should point out Anderson Cooper, who I think in probably the finest moment for a moderator throughout these debates so far, really pressed on the subject of, okay, we know what you said, Mr. Trump, but what did you actually do? And he kept repeating it, and finally,
Yeah, that's
almost
true.
as an aside, Trump made a pretty clear denial of having done anything. And I thought to myself when I heard that, oh my God, if some woman steps forward in the next day or 2 or 3 and has some sort of evidence that proves that he did actually make some sort of overture like this, he's going to get crucified all over again.
Well, and that's the other problem with what he said and what he said about locker room talk is that the story is not going to end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, although, I felt that what this debate was all about, and I think Hillary was a big part of it, was really trying to swing this back to issues. And there was such a broad range of issues tonight, from healthcare to Islamophobia. Was there any one issue tonight that you thought, wow, that actually was a substantive, policy-oriented discussion?
well, actually, the issue about Obamacare, because I think that this is going to be, I mean, in a normal election year, this actually would be a pretty big liability for the Democrats. And especially, we're coming up on a month of open enrollment, and people are seeing those premiums rise. And there is this question of what are you going to do? And you did see Donald Trump talk about, this grand plan to get something to replace Obamacare. He didn't really, and Anderson Cooper smartly tried to get him to really nail him down on specifics. We didn't get a whole lot of those other than block grants. I'm sure we'll see a lot of analysis of that in the coming days. Hillary Clinton, by contrast, went into some level of detail about the need to actually fix the program while at the same time saving people who are already covered. So I think that was one area where we actually did get somewhat into the substance.
Where I felt I would have loved to have seen more substance, and I'm going to hold out some hope for the third debate, was at a question that was pushed all the way to the very end of the debate about the choice of a Supreme Court justice. Man, I would have loved to have seen a little more time and a little more detail from what the choices these candidates want.
And I think there Clinton had, I thought it was an interesting exchange because it was kind of in the eye of the beholder. Clinton said, hey, I'm going to appoint someone who's going to overturn Citizens United. I'm going to appoint someone who upholds Roe versus Wade and also upholds same-sex marriage. And Donald Trump comes back and says, I'm going to appoint someone like Antonin Scalia, essentially confirming everything that Hillary Clinton said. They are diametrically opposed on who they would actually appoint to the Supreme Court.
Ted, I think we got time for one more question. The first debate delivered a very healthy audience, clear of 80 million people. Any chance tonight, given all the interest in the Access Hollywood scandal that I think may have driven more viewers to this debate, that we could see an even bigger audience the second time?
Possibly. I will be surprised, though, because I think that the first debate had the advantage of days and days and days of buildup on people's radar screen. This debate became much more interesting only in the last 2 days. So it's also on a weekend. I'm a little skeptical you'll get people as tuned in. I mean, the trend has been the first debate always gets the bigger audience, and then it starts to decline from there.
Well, that's where we'll leave it. Ted Johnson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
No one knows more at Variety about the election, these campaigns. It has been wild every step of the way, but we're going to continue to be here. We thank you watching along at Facebook for some great comments and questions. Really helped enliven the discussion. Come back when we do the third debate. I'm Andrew Wallenstein, co-editor-chief of Variety. Thanks again.